boys. Today's teaching is going to be on prayer. Something I'm really passionate about as of recent. I feel like, man, we're in a spiritual battle. Paul says that it's not flesh and blood, but principalities, rulers of darkness that we wrestle with. And I think that, there's a time and place for practical methods like Kip talked about. And I think it's really important to have a healthy lifestyle. But if we're going to fight a spiritual battle, I think we have to use spiritual means to win them. So with that being said, we'll kick it off. Here's the outline of what we're going to be doing today. First being, what is prayer? The purpose, being relationship and conformity. I'll talk about how to pray, some things to keep in mind, and then how frequent. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So first of all, the relationship aspect of prayer. God intended for us to be step in step with him. And as you see in James 4:8, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. I think it's really important because so many people have this perspective that God's the one that draws us in, but clearly it's a misconception based off of this verse. A big lie that I wanted to address was that I was created for God. The big truth to combat that lie is that I was created to be with God. And we see that in the Garden of Eden. God said that everything was good. He built the land, the ocean, the stars, and he made man and said, this is very good. So I really believe that that's one of the biggest intentions of the entire Bible is unity with God and with people. So yeah, I guess that's God's intent for a relationship. What does it look like, man? It's such a simple answer, but it's also profound in a way because I think most people treat Christianity as a religion where you attend Sunday school, you do all the things right, but that relationship is lacking. It's like, as a husband, as a friend, we can show up to all the things but not really be there in our minds. And it's a very different concept if you understand what I'm saying. The difference between relationship and religion, it's very distinct. Why it matters: building unshakable trust and peace, shaping your identity, and aligning your heart with his, which leads me to my next point, which is conformity. I'm sorry, bro, that picture gets me. The lie that I'm addressing is that prayer is the source by which I receive the things that I want. I think so many of our prayer lives sound like, God, if your will be done, may I have this job, may I have this thing, may this person be healed. But real prayers comes from this truth, which is that it's not the act of revelation, but of conformity, meaning it's not the process by which you're given things, it's the process by which you receive God's will and you conform to his ways. So like when I'm praying, rather than saying like, God, please give me a new job, pray, God, may I find peace where I am. And if your will is to be done and it is to find another job, help me to see that. You know what I mean? There's a vast distinction between those two prayer methods. And I threw this in this little picture of the sand right here. I don't know if you can see it, but I had this vision in my mind that like you're walking on a beach, right? And the first method of prayer is like God's walking beside you and he's following you. And you're picking up all these seashells, you're digging holes 6 feet to China, right? You're making sand castles, and God's just following you all over the beach. But what is supposed to be in actuality is God's walking in the sand and we're following in his footsteps behind him. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. Um, and a support verse for that: do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. What's up, Ian?
Hold up. What's up?
Amen. But going on to the next slide, it's conformity 2. And just a reminder, like, God's not your piggy bank, man. You know, the two verses that I have to cite for this are James 4:7 and Matthew 7:11. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. Like I said, it's this walking on the sand thing. Like, we want God to follow us in our lives as we live it, but we were meant to follow God. And then Matthew 7:11, if you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So it provides even a deeper understanding of that that distinction between asking for things that I want and following God. Because what he's saying here is, like, you don't think I know you need money? You're asking for a job. Like, like, I'm in full understanding that you need food and you need patience and you need these things, but he's saying just trust in me and follow me. So rather than asking for what you want, follow God and allow him to mold you into the person that you're supposed to become. And remember, this is a part of the what do I pray section. So I had this image in my head, and I don't know if it's on the next slide, but have y'all ever seen Avengers Infinity War? So Doctor Strange opens up the time stone at the end of the movie right before they fight Thanos, and he's like opening up all these possibilities, right? And I think he calculates like 18 million different scenarios and they only win in one. Imagine, like, if Tony Stark went up to him in the middle of his calculation and was like, "Hey Tony, what if we tried this? What if we tried to tie up Thanos, or what if we went for his legs?" But Doctor Strange says, "Be patient and know that there's only one way to do this. But if I tell you, it won't happen." And I think in a similar way, like, when we come to God asking for these things, it seems kind of preposterous in the grand scheme of who God is when you really break down the dichotomy of, like, what his identity is as a God. Because yes, you know, Hebrews says that God is the exact revelation of Jesus, comparing the two of them together, saying they're like the same in character. Therefore, he is caring, he is loving, he is fatherly, but he's also a God that created the universe. And Job 38:41 really 38 through 41 really expresses this idea, because Job is like at the end of his wits, like lost his mind. And what's that look for you? That's
Not
all
the
them
J
eyes,
word, man.
bro.
Not the J word.
I'm just messing around. But Job is like at the end of his wits, at the end of his at the end of the road, like he can't go anymore. And you know, friends come to him and try to tell him the reason why he's experiencing what he's experiencing. Job tries to reconcile with himself why he's experiencing what he's experiencing, and then eventually he just goes to God and was like, "Why?" And so God says, "Dress like a man and come before me." And then he says, "Job, where were you when I created the stars? Where were you when I created the ocean and made the tide and it came and went? Where were you when I laid the cornerstone of the universe?" And so, yes, he's this father who cares for you, but he's also this God who knows your life end before you even live it. So living in that gray area of father and Lord is difficult, but I think that your prayer life should reflect both. Um, Next slide. So before I get into this, man, I had a train of thought. It'll find me. Prayer is a practice, and like everything, as time prolongs, you'll get better and your voice will sound different when you're speaking. But I guess the point that I'm getting at is like I wouldn't expect for your prayer to sound like what I've described tonight even. But like all things we grow, and Paul says like from milk to meat. So there's this progression of what you're intaking. First you were a baby and then you grew up to be a man. And with that being said, God wants you to come to him regardless of where you are in life. If you're needing things and you can't get past that, if you are in deep waters and you don't know where to go, like asking questions, even doing what I said not to do was understandable. But like I said, with all things, it comes in progression. So um, don't take my word as a say all be all. This is just a look into the future, I guess. But the summary, and I felt that this was really important to mention, was the Lord's Prayer. You know, Jesus said, if you are to pray, pray like this: Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our debts as we forgive other debtors. So in that first line, like I said, man, he's God the Father. Um, and the word that's used in Greek, I think, is Abba, which actually translates into Father. So it's not like this single expression only Jesus used. It was meant to be applied for all of us to understand who God is. So when Jesus calls God Father in this, he's telling us to call him Father as well. So that there is a deep sense of love and relationship that comes with this. But the next verse ties in that dichotomy where it says like, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So your Father and I'm putting this all on the table. I want you to know about it, but even if it doesn't happen, your will be done. And then those last two verses are like perfect for Christian living, relying on the Lord and forgiving others as we've been forgiven. But yeah, that's all I had, guys. It was a very small PowerPoint. I'd love to hear your thoughts or questions if you had any.
So Tyson, I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
Not I know like not everything that should be said during prayer was covered. But like how would you rank um, when you thank God for what he's done, how would you
Mhm.
rank that? I guess rank's not a good word, but like do you think that's a necessary inclusion? Do you think that, he already knows you're thankful? Do you think that, it's always good to give thanks for everything? Like, what do you think? Like, how should we give thanks to God for the things He has blessed us with?
Yeah, the first thing that I'll say is that thankfulness is not uh it's a hard metric to describe because what I may be thankful for, you may consider as a disgrace. And therefore, thankfulness is not a objective, but it's a perception. So first, even seeing the world through thankful eyes, but then secondly, coming to God with that, I would say, man, if you would want to hear it as a dad, like God would want to hear it as your father. And I think that includes, forgiveness for sins. Like, man, little Johnny lied and he ate a cookie when he said he didn't. But him coming up to you and saying, Dad, I'm sorry for eating the cookie, like that's a big deal. Like that would bring a lot of grown men to tears, you know? And so being thankful, man, like of course, as you said, God knows that you got what you wanted, and it's good to see the smile on your face. But if he came up to you and said, "Dad, thank you for what you gave me," like that's a big deal. Um, I hope that answers your question in some way.
Yeah, it does.